March 17, 2026. Somewhere in the dark interior of Fukushima Daiichi Reactor 3, a drone weighing 95 grams, about the weight of a deck of cards, tilts its camera upward, and for the first time, it sees something no human being has ever seen before. Not clearly, not directly, not like this. The image is quiet, almost still. Metal structures hang down from above, tubes, housings, geometry that once belonged to a functioning nuclear reactor. Now, it's all wrong. Bent, displaced, fused together with something else, something darker. Below it, the floor of the reactor pressure vessel, and from above, hanging down into the frame, material, lumps, deposits, adhesions, what looks like metal that has melted, flowed, and then stopped, frozen in place. This drone had been moving through the reactor for almost 2 weeks, navigating in complete darkness, in radiation fields that would destroy most electronics in minutes. And on this day, it reached the bottom. What it captured wasn't just another image. It was the answer to a question that had been open for 15 years. What actually happened inside Fukushima, and what that camera saw, was something we're still trying to understand. Because to understand why this matters, you have to go back to a moment where no one could see anything at all. March 11, 2011. A magnitude 9 earthquake strikes off the coast of Japan. Then the tsunami hits. At Fukushima Daiichi, cooling systems fail. And over the next few days, 3 reactors, units 1, 2, and 3, melt down. That part is widely known. What isn't is what happened after, because almost immediately, Fukushima became a place no one could go. Inside the primary containment vessels, radiation levels were lethal in seconds. So for more than a decade, everything we thought we knew about the melted fuel was inferred. From pressure readings, from simulations, from models originally built for accidents like 3 Mile Island. Even muon tomography, scanning the reactor using cosmic particles, could only give outlines, not detail. The honest answer for 15 years was this. We had very good guesses, but we had never seen it. Estimates suggested around 880 tons of melted fuel debris across the 3 reactors. In Unit 1 alone, models implied that more than 90% of the fuel had dropped from the core, through the reactor vessel, and onto the concrete below. But those were still models, educated guesses about something no one had directly observed. At Chernobyl, within months, people were inside the reactor building. At Fukushima, that was never going to happen. The geometry was different. The containment was sealed. The radiation was extreme. So the question remained open, until something very small changed that. Because when Fukushima finally gave up its first physical sample, it weighed less than a paperclip. November 2024. For the first time since the disaster, TEPCO retrieves a physical sample of melted material from inside Reactor Unit 2. It doesn't look like much. A fragment roughly 9 millimeters by 7 millimeters, weighing 0.693 grams, reddish-brown overall, with black metallic patches. But what it represents is something much larger. This is the first time anyone has physically held Fukushima's melted core material. Not inferred, not simulated. Held. The sample is sent to the Japan Atomic Energy Agency, and then, over months, analyzed using gamma-ray spectrometry, SEM imaging, X-ray CT scanning. What they find is not simple. The material isn't uniform. It's multi-phase. A zirconium-uranium structure, what's called a ZrUO phase, surrounded by iron and chromium, which tells you something very specific about what happened inside the reactor. Because zirconium, from the fuel cladding, melts at a higher temperature than the steel around it. So this structure froze first, while the iron and chromium around it were still liquid. What you're looking at is not just melted fuel. It's a snapshot, a frozen moment of the meltdown itself. Fuel, cladding, structural steel, all mixing together as everything failed, and then stopping, locked in place. A nuclear chemist compared the analysis to asteroid sample return missions. Because the techniques are similar, the scale is not. This is less than a gram of material. But it contains more information about the meltdown than years of modeling. And yet, even this didn't answer the biggest question. because Unit 2 was only part of the story. What about Reactor 3? If the sample tells you what melted fuel is, the drones tell you where it went, because getting that image from March 2026 required solving a problem that had stopped engineers for 15 years. You cannot just open a door into a reactor containment vessel. You can't send a person. You can't even send most robots. Earlier attempts, around 2017, sent underwater robots into Unit 3. They returned blurry images, partial data. They never reached the bottom. So for this mission, TEPCO built something different. Micro-drones, roughly 12 by 13 centimeters, 95 grams, each carrying a radiation sensor. But the real challenge wasn't the drone, it was how to get it inside. They designed a sealed box system, a custom enclosure, airtight, weighing nearly 700 pounds, mounted on a crawler platform. The drones are deployed from inside that system, through a penetration into the containment, one at a time. Inside, they operate autonomously. No GPS, no stable signal, just navigating around debris, in darkness, in radiation fields that would destroy consumer electronics almost instantly. The mission begins March 5th, 2026. The first flights map accessible areas, measure radiation, test survivability. Then the drones begin moving deeper, systematically covering the bottom of the vessel. And then, on March 17th, one of them tilts its camera upward and captures that image. Structures hanging from above, deposits below, a shape that TEPCO identifies carefully as the bottom of the reactor pressure vessel. Not confirmed, provisional, but real. Because now, for the first time, we're not guessing what's inside Fukushima. We're looking at it. The question is, what exactly are we seeing? The footage itself is not dramatic. There's no glowing mass, no movement, just stillness. But what's in that stillness matters. The structures hanging from the ceiling are control rod guide tubes and control rod drive housings. In a functioning reactor, these sit beneath the core. Now they're displaced, bent downward, out of position, which tells you something immediately. The core above them failed. Material moved downward and carried these structures with it. On the floor, the drones captured deposits, irregular, clumped, adhered to surfaces. TEPCO describes them as consistent with melted fuel debris, not confirmed, because confirmation would require retrieving a sample, which in Unit 3 hasn't happened yet. But the physics lines up. During the meltdown, temperatures exceeded the melting point of the fuel, the zirconium cladding, the surrounding steel. What melted flowed downward. Some of it oxidized, some of it vaporized, some of it fell through. And what you're seeing now is where it stopped. There's even evidence of a hole in the vessel, with material hanging down through it, which matches long-standing models. This is the moment where prediction meets observation. For 15 years, this is what physicists thought would happen. Now, we're looking at it. But there's an important limit here. What the drones captured is visual. They are very confident, but they are not certain, because certainty requires touching it, and no one is touching it anytime soon. Which leads to the part of this story that isn't in the footage, the timeline. Because even with all of this, the scale of the problem hasn't changed. There are still approximately 880 tons of melted fuel debris across Fukushima. The Unit 2 sample weighed 0.693 grams. You can do that math. Full-scale removal of fuel debris is now expected to begin in 2037 or later. And for Unit 3 specifically, TEPCO estimates 12 to 15 years of preparation before that can even start. The original target for fully decommissioning the site was 2051. That is now widely understood to be unrealistic. This is not a short-term problem, and it's not one Japan is solving alone. International teams of engineers and scientists have been working on this since 2017, with timelines measured not in years, but in decades, even centuries if you include waste storage. And that raises a broader question. Should all of this debris be removed at all? Some argue yes. Others argue containment may be safer. That debate is still ongoing, but the reality is simpler. The breakthrough we just saw doesn't solve the problem. It just shows us where we are. So, after 15 years, where exactly is that? For 15 years, The bottom of Fukushima Reactor 3 was a place described entirely in models. In March 2026, it became a place that exists in photographs. That sounds small. It isn't, because every plan for what happens next depends on knowing what's actually there. The drones showed us the bottom of the reactor. They showed us structures that shouldn't be where they are. They showed us deposits that almost certainly shouldn't exist. What they did not show us is certainty. No one has touched the corium in Unit 3. No one has confirmed its composition directly. And based on the current timeline, no one will for years. What we have now is visibility. And for the first time, a way to map what's inside. But the gap between seeing something and removing it is measured in decades. And in this case, possibly lifetimes. Nothing about this story happens without the engineers, the drone operators, the analysts, the people designing systems to work in places no human can go. They are the reason we can even ask this question now. What does finished look like for a place like this? Because after everything we've seen, that answer is still unclear, and it may stay that way for a very long time.